Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I'm your host, Charles. Along with me, as always, my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Galoth. How you doing today, Jacob?
I am swell, Charles. I am excited for another pitch, another episode of the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast, episode 254.
254, baby.
I believe you've got something exciting for us today.
Yes, I do, right? First, before I get into the show that I have pitched for today, I do want to make a small correction to the last show I pitched before the nightmare ends, right? I mentioned in the show, right, our main character. Have you done
this before? Is this is a new development?
I've never done this before. This is a first. But somebody pointed out to me, right? You don't lose your hair because you've got cancer, right? You don't lose your hair because you've got a tumor. You lose your hair because of the chemotherapy treatment. So when our main character loses his hair at the very end of the movie, that doesn't make sense. And when I was told that, a woman told that to me, and I said to her, "Who fucking cares? He does cocaine off of a giraffe in that movie. Like, shut up." But I do want to point out that if the tumor is pushing down on the pituitary gland, that could cause a hormonal imbalance that causes him to lose his hair. Also, he did a lot of cocaine. Like, he wasn't treating his body very well, and his body was dying. So I think it is reasonable that he lost his hair. But on to the show this week.
I don't know if it was
new show, new
but
ideas.
We'll let it pass.
Huh?
You said it was reasonable. I said I don't think it was very reasonable.
Oh my God. New show, new idea, right? West of Nowhere is the title that I've been given, right?
Hell yeah.
So, I said last week, I wasn't going to do something that's overly serious, and I'm not going to do anything that's, like, real and, like, super emotionally charged or anything like that. So, this week, I'm doing a show about, a gentleman by the name of Edward Franjolio, who is a heroin-addicted music critic.
God damn it, Charlie!
Must take his
his
adoptive daughter to to her mother's rehab clinic so that she could say goodbye before her mother dies. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing anything serious. This is a classic VRP episode. It's gonna be about cowboys. There's gonna be monsters in it. There's all sorts of weird, like, magic and shit in it, okay?
I don't know if you're lying to me.
It's an adventure show where we're traveling across a crazy, like, land, all right?
I don't know when the sarcasm stopped or began. I don't know which part was the lie.
It's done. So, West of Nowhere, and in parentheses underneath, it's going to say East of Everywhere.
Oh.
That's not going to make sense later. That's just
what
because
you put.
I think it's fun.
All right.
Yeah. Reverend Hollow Marsh is a corpse that walks like a man clad in the vestments he once wore while his family burned alive. He now wanders the Lost West, a land between now and forever, in search of the man that killed his family and ruined his afterlife. Right? So he's our kind of our badass, right? He's our Mandalorian of the show, you know? He's cold, stoic, right? He's in, like, pastor's vestments, right? So he's not in a church, like, he's not dressed as a priest, right? But he's in, like, religious garb, you know? He's got a cool cowboy hat. The religious garb is, like, all tattered and shot up, you know, because he's been gunfighting across the Lost West for years now, right? In search of the man with the eye of a raven, right? That's the man who killed his family. The only thing he remembers about him is that one eyeball was a raven's eye, you know? So he's like, ooh. And he's been searching across the Lost West for this man, hoping to find him and send him off to another circle of hell, somewhere even worse than where they are right now. Because this is the afterlife, but it's also not, sort of. It's kind of it's a weird limbo situation.
Okay.
Where people who aren't good enough to go to heaven, aren't bad enough to be sent to the truly worst places in the universe, right? True hell, right? They get sent here. So it's a little bit worse than limbo but not as bad. But, you know, it's a little bit worse than Limbo, a little bit worse than Purgatory, but it's still a place where people live and, like, have families and friends and joy, you know? It's not somewhere that's just all death and sadness all the time, you know? Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Kind of like the underworld in Corpse Bride, right? Just laying out the land. Our second main character, Hailee McCraw, is a low-level man, low-level bag man.
You describing yourself?
Low-level man. I missed the word bag when I was reading the description. I'm sorry. He was a low-level bag man for the Irish mob in Chicago in 1931. He was assassinated while delivering a package of life-saving medicine to the boss's mother. He is quick-witted and ambitious, but sometimes gets in over his head, doesn't really think his plans all the way through, but he really is ambitious, right? And he's got ambition. He wants to take over the Chicago, crime scene, you know? And then after he gets killed, he wants to take over the underworld, underworld, if you will, right? The crime that exists within this underworld, right? And our last main character is Professor Hannah Mason.
Well, why is Professor with an
A? Who is an Egyptologist. Yeah, it's just because it's funny.
Okay.
Professor Hannah Mason is an Egyptologist who was killed in a room collapse while exploring a hidden tomb. So, if you know, back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, there was a huge fad for the rich and famous of America and of England to get really into Egyptian, like, mythology and tombs and mummies and shit like that, right? And so there was a profession, Egyptology, which was basically just grave robbing and stealing artifacts from Egyptian tombs and temples and shit, and bringing it back to the West so that we could all gawk at how cool it is, you know? And so Professor Hannah Mason was one of these Egyptologists, so she wasn't really a good person, but she wasn't like a terrible person. She wasn't like intentionally hurting anyone. She was just stealing artifacts to move her own career forward, right? So that she could get tenure and become like a really well-respected intellectual, right?
Yeah.
In her life, she was heavily disrespected, never really truly regarded by the intellectual elite at her university or anywhere, but her afterlife seems to be a lot more equal. You know, people in the afterlife don't really seem to see race or gender in the same way that they did when they're alive, you know? It's still a concept to them, but it's not as much of a concrete reality because everyone's kind of a corpse, you know? Nobody's fucking. Nobody's kissing, right? So, and there's not really as much of a sexist bent in this universe, right? So those are our three characters. If you'll notice, they all come from different time periods, right? Reverend Hollow Marsh is really like a cowboy, right? Like 1850s style cowboy, right? Hailee McCraw is from the 30s, and Professor Hannah Mason's from the 1890s, right?
Yeah.
So it's very, you know, we get this slice of time, right? This like 80-year time difference, right? And you would be so proud of me. I drew a little map. I drew a map of the Lost West with all
awesome.
the different locations that our main characters would go down.
I imagine, does it look as bad? Now, you've only drawn one other map in the VRP podcast history. Do you remember? I remember it. Do you remember which one it was? What show?
What was it? The Endless War? Was it? What was it?
It was the Mortal Coil, I believe it was. Mortal Coil.
Oh, Mortal Coil. I just sent you the map, by the way.
You did.
It's more just like a whole bunch of locations. But we're gonna have all sorts of fun. And Jake, if you want to put the map up on the YouTube video, you're welcome to. I am giving you full permission
to use your brilliant artwork here. Okay. Yeah. I knew that for you. So if you're watching the YouTube video, you're probably seeing Charlie's lovely map. Now, I don't know if this is really a map, I'm gonna be honest. This is more just, you just drew locations, and they're
exactly
on a piece of paper near each other. How is this a map?
Yeah.
What part of this is mapping?
Well, see, that's going to be one of the problems that our main characters are going to face, because Professor Hannah Hannah Mason, her whole, like, shtick is that she wants to be the first person to map this place, right? The Lost West is this, like, ever-changing, constantly moving, elastic, fluid place, and she wants to map it, make it more concrete and solid, right? And so she's attempting to make this map, but eventually she realizes that all she can really do is figure out vague areas of where things are in relation to one another, right? So that's generally what the map will look like towards the end of the show. As they find more locations and more interesting shit, they'll be like, well, we know that the Sky Village is to the left of Osiris, right? But we don't really know how far away to the left of it is, and we don't know, like, is it a higher elevation, lower elevation, right? Because the Lost West is constantly in flux, you know? But we'll get to that. We're just gonna start with the show. I've got a pilot episode, right? And then I've got episode ideas, as we do, because I'm doing a True Blue traditional Very Reasonable Pilots pitch. That is to say, I did very little work in preparation, and I'm just gonna be making most of it up off the top of my head.
Oh, you can't admit that. You admit that to me after. You don't tell the audience that.
No, I want the audience to know that this is what we're doing.
Okay.
This is improv. No, I do have an episode pitch.
Okay.
Episode idea. I do. Episode starts with a hand reaching out of a shallow grave as the rain falls down onto the mud. Right? This hand begins to pull itself out, and this man crawls out of the grave. Hailee McCraw has recently been riddled with Tommy gun bullets, right? And we see this guy, and he pulls himself out of the grave, and he's covered in mud and shit, and, like, it's raining, and he's in a suit. So imagine sort of Peaky Blinders-esque. He's in a suit, but it's full of bullet holes, right? And the suit's just covered with bullet holes. He's got blood everywhere, and he's got that dumb little hat, right? That the Peaky Blinders boys wear, right? And he crawls his way out of the grave, and he looks up, right? He looks to his left, and he sees nothing but endless darkness, right? Just fields and fields of nothingness, right? And this black sun hanging above everything, right? Then he looks to his left, and he sees a very quaint little town, right? And on the town, on the, like, front of the town, there's a sign that says Osiris, home of the dead. Right? And so, Hailee begins to walk to the town, right? And he bumbles through the town, he sees it's just kind of like an old western town, right? There's a general store, there's a doctor, right? You see kids playing around, but every one of these people has pretty evident ways that they died, right? Like, you'll see a little kid run by, and he's got a noose around his neck. Or you'll see, like, a woman, and she's shopping, and she's got, like, a cannonball-sized hole through her chest, right?
With, like,
and so it's just like,
head
okay,
just walking around, like the blood's just like kind of
yeah, exactly.
Bone sticking out.
We see a guy, and he walks by, and he tips his hat to Hailee, but he's got, like, just his skull has been caved in through the middle, you know?
Yeah.
He's got an axe or something sticking out of it, right? And Haley's like, he's kind of freaked out and scared, but he's also like, this is fucking weird and kind of cool, but also really fucking scary. So he just, like, does the only thing that he can think to do, right? Now, this guy is a gangster in Prohibition Chicago, right? What's he gonna do? He's gonna go drink. And so he goes to the Lonely Hangman, which is the local tavern, pub, bar in this town, right? And he sits down at the bar, and he looks up, and he doesn't see anyone behind the bar, and he's like, hello? Anyone? Is there a bartender or anything? And he hears a voice come from the ground. He's like, what? And the voice yells again, like, hey, down here, asshole, right? And Hailee looks down, and he sees a kid who cannot be older than 8 years old, right? Can't be older than 8. But he is dressed in medieval garb, and he has a sword through his chest, right? And so the kid gets up on a stepladder, he picks himself up, and he looks at Hailee and he says, "What can I get you?" And Hailee's like, are you a little young to be serving drinks? And he's like, "I'm 3,000 years old, dude. I've seen it all, done it all. You're not gonna fucking surprise me. I just happen to look like a kid because this is when I died. So, What can I get you? Either give me an order or get the fuck out." Right? Hailee gets a beer, right? He starts drinking his beer, right? And he's just kind of like, he's putting his fingers in the bullet holes, right? He's looking at his suit, and he's just kind of like, it's actually really dawning on him that he is dead, right? And so he looks around then in the bar, and he sees all these other like kind of creepy characters. You know, he sees like World War I soldiers, and he sees other gangsters, he sees cowboys, he sees samurai, like he sees every variety of dead person that you could imagine, right? And then another guy walks in, right, also out of the rain outside, and he's clearly also pretty freshly new, right, to the underworld, and he sits down next to Hailee, and Hailee looks him up and nods and puts his head down, and then looks back, and he recognizes the man who's sitting next to him. That's the guy who shot him in the back.
That's awkward.
So, apparently what happened was, right after this guy, let's just call him Diego, murdered Hailee, he himself was murdered in retaliation by the Irish mob.
Damn.
So this guy's gonna just like have like piano wire tied around his neck, and it's just gonna be hanging there, you know? And he's gonna be kind of like, he's also gonna nod, then put his head down, then look back. And they're both kind of simultaneously realizing what's happened. And then a brawl starts, right? Hailee smashes him inside of the head with a glass, right? And grabs Diego by the piano wire around his neck and just starts pulling. Diego sticks his fingers inside of Hailee's chest through the bullet wounds and like throws him on the bar. There's this whole fight, and you know, these people in the afterlife, they're bored as fuck. They have nothing to do. There's a fist fight going on. Awesome. Let's get involved, right? They start throwing punches, hitting people in the back with chairs. The bartender is like screaming at everyone to stop, right? He's got a shotgun. He's firing in the air, but nobody's really concerned because they're all already dead, you know? It just kind of inconvenienced to be shot in this universe, right? And Hailee starts screaming like, "You and that stupid motherfucker with the bird eye and all these motherfuckers who led me down this stupid fucking path," right? And he just starts beating Diego, right? And Reverend Hollow Marsh grabs Hailee by the back, stands him up, picks Diego up, smashes his head in the bar, grabs Hailee by the shoulder, and walks him out, right? Very decisively ends this brawl. Everybody kind of like looks around after the fight ends, and they like kind of get a little embarrassed, and they like start picking things up, right? Meanwhile, the bartender's like giving everybody the stink eye as they like put the chairs back, stand the chairs and the tables back up, and like sweep things up, and they just kind of feel bad. Reverend Hollow Marsh takes Hailee, and Hailee's like kicking and screaming. He's like annoyed, but he's like, what the fuck? Hollow Marsh pushes him up against a wall. You said something about a guy with a bird eye? Yeah, guy, he's some guy. After I died, I saw this guy, and he had a bird's eye. One of his left eye was a bird's eye, right? And I saw him, and then I was here. I woke up in that grave, and I dragged myself to the bar. And Reverend Marsh is perplexed, annoyed. He's like, what do you remember about him, right? And Hailee just describes very blandly, he was dressed in a long black coat, right? He had one bird's eye, he had one blue eye, right? He had thick red hair, right? And it's like, okay, you're coming with me, Hailee, right? We're going to Pandemonium. Pandemonium? Yeah, Pandemonium. It's the capital city of wherever the hell we are. And I think I know somebody there who can help us find this guy. Help you find... Why the fuck would I help you find this dude? Yeah. Hailee asks, and Reverend says, well, if you're with me, right, I can keep you safe. I can explain, I can make sure that you know what's going on, and you're a criminal, right? Go to Pandemonium. It's literally called Pandemonium. There's so much crime to do, right? We could, I'll help you get into the crime underworld of the capital city of hell.
Which, based on the photo that I'm looking at,
and
here,
Hailee
looks like a multi-layered cake. Or maybe it's the Tower of Babel.
Yes. Well, that is the... Well, no, it's from Paradise Lost. The name it is from Paradise Lost. So if you look up Pandemonium Paradise Lost, that's what it is. But, better drawn.
Hey, oh, you're saying
what I mean?
You drew it better than
I'm not the best artist.
They did
Yeah, I drew it better. Well, it's Pandemonium. It's from Paradise Lost originally, but I know it because it's also the main city of hell in the Hellboy mythos, and that's more my speed, right? So, back to the story, right? They decide to travel again together. Hailee's a little anxious, but you know what? He doesn't really have any better options, and really, what's the worst that can happen to him? He's gonna die again? Shut up, And so they go to the stables, right, and they procure some horses. Reverend Hollow Marsh has a conversation with the guy who owns the stable in the back of the stable, and after he comes out, Hollow Marsh just tells Hailee, you can take whatever horses you want. It's fun. And I should also mention, Reverend Marsh is basically a skeleton, right? Most of the people that we've seen are partially human, a little bit more Beetlejuicy, right? They look like people who are dead. Whereas this guy, Reverend Marsh, is a skeleton that walks like a man, And he that's just how he looks. And it's kind of intimidating, and he kind of is more well known, right? He's kind of like the ghoul in the Fallout show, or like the Mandalorian. And so they get their horses, right? And when this plucky young woman comes up, right? And she's got bleeding from the head, right? But she's also dressed in the classic 1890 adventurer garb, right? All the canvas tan clothes and everything, and she's got little round reading glasses on, and she's got all sorts of books and charts on her, and she says, sorry gentlemen, did I hear that you guys are going to Pandemonium? Would you be willing to take me with you? I'm happy to offer my services. I consider myself to be the foremost translator of every language that you can find here in the Lost West, as well as being responsible for creating the most extensive map of the Long West. So I believe that would be of great help. And Reverend says no. And they start to ride away, and she chases after them, and she starts to try and sell herself more and more and more, and Reverend is like, no, 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 and Hailee finally says, fine, get the fuck on my horse, right? We'll go. Just as long as you shut up. And Professor Hannah Mason says, oh, fucking great, awesome, fantastic, right? I just need you to help me carry my bags. And then she points to a whole bunch of bags that they have. And both Reverend Marsh and Hailee kind of roll their eyes a little bit, but they throw the bags on the back of the horses. Hannah hops on the back of Hailee's horse, and they ride off into the sunset, right? Into the sunrise, sunset. The sun doesn't really change in this universe. It's just black, just a black sun. And then, as they're riding away, we see that they're being followed by a raven with one blue pupiled eye. Ooh. End of episode 1. That's the end of the pilot show, right? We got a little bit of action, a little bit of adventure, a little bit of comedy, right? Very classic episode.
I'm intrigued by this raven man figure thing. What could it be? Is it Death? Is it Charlie? Is it...
Well, is it Death? Is it me? Is it Odin? It's Odin.
Oh.
because we're also going to be playing with a lot of different mythologies in this universe, because Osiris is the name of this town, right? Osiris, if you don't know, is the god of death and rebirth in Egyptian mythology. Mechlekute, who is the Aztec god of death, will also be making an appearance as sort of a Orson Welles-ian, Baron Harkonnen, like huge, big, fat guy who's got like tons of women and people feeding him stuff. You know, that's gonna be one of the adventures they go on, right? But I think the next episode will be the Winchester Labyrinth. Now, are you at all familiar with the history of the Winchester Mansion?
Is that the guy that was like the magic man in England? Does that make sense? Or is that a different guy? The father of
I
English
believe
magic?
you're thinking...
Is that something else?
It is not. I do believe you are thinking of Oliver
Cromwell, that's what it is.
Crowley? Yeah, Oliver Cromwell. No, Winchester Mansion, right? So, Winchester rifles, right? The most effective killing machines the world had ever seen up until that point, right? In like the 1820s or 1920s. And the family got super wealthy from the Winchester rifles.
Oh, sorry.
Now, Aleister Crowley. Yeah. Now, the matriarch of the family, after her father, who made the rifles, died, she believed that she was being haunted by the spirits of all the people who had been killed with her family's weapons, right? So she built this massive mansion with like tons of hidden stairways and doors that opened to nothing and like rooms that got smaller as you walked through them and like all this like crazy shit. And this is real. You can go find it, right? Because she believed that would be able to keep the spirits from getting her because they would be so confused by the house, right? She was kind of a nutcase. And so, in this universe, it's going to be revealed, right, in our second episode, after our main characters camp out for the night, they wake up, right, and they find themselves in this sort of like an eerie fog, and they stumble upon this massive manor, like larger than any house could ever be, right? Like, think about, you know, when you see a picture of like a Costco from like a bird's eye view, right? And it's just like huge, you know? Mm-hmm. Like that. And they walk in and they see this old woman who's sitting in the front, knitting, right? And we see her manservant, who's sort of this stuffy, well-to-do butler sort of a character. Think of Alfred, but less cool, you know? And she explains, like, my name is Allison Winchester, and I've lived here for the last 600 years, right? Time doesn't make any goddamn sense in this universe, by the way. I don't know if you've gotten that yet, by the medieval kid being 3,000 years old, but still. So she explains that they're welcome in the Winchester household, right? They can make themselves at home. Please have a seat because you're never going to leave. And they're stuck inside of the Winchester Labyrinth because in real life, the house, that the Winchester Mansion, was built on the convergence of ley lines that allowed for the spirits from the Lost West to sort of infect the home, right? It wasn't that they were chasing her because her family made all these guns. It was just they kind of found there was a thin spot in the fabric of the universe on the ground that the Winchester Mansion was built on, right? And so that has fed into the Lost West. It's not just a one-sided thing, equal and opposite reactions. So now there is the Winchester Mansion is in the Lost West, but it is truly what she had always envisioned it to be. And now that she's passed on, she lives here, and she welcomes all strangers and all weary travelers into her home, but she's never seen any of them leave, right? Seemingly, all the people who go here get lost in the mansion, right? And so our main characters will, like, be, you know, get stuck in the mansion, and I'm thinking this could be a fun two-parter episode, right? Where, like, the first half, they're kind of, like, getting lost in the mansion, uncovering the mystery and putting everything together, right? And the second episode is all three of them using their individual skills to kind of puzzle their way to escaping the manor, right? And as they escape the manor, they're riding their horses away, right? And we just see the final image is little old lady Winchester sitting in a rocking chair on the front porch, and the butler illuminated it by backlight as they just wave goodbye. And then the manor disappears into the fog again. And then you see Hannah Mason quickly scribbling down everything that she can, like trying to look at the stars, look at any landmarks so that she could get like a real possible, map of the situation. But all she ends up doing is, drawing a vague interpretation of what the labyrinth looks like, right? And I am just gonna... those are the episode ideas I have now. I'm just gonna explain what's the rest of the map for our lovely YouTube listeners. We have the Sky Village, because this is a Western through and through, and one thing that you always have to do in Westerns is you have to talk about Native Americans, right? You just have to. And so I want the Sky Village to be a village on the top of a plateau, and it is just the only nice place in the whole West, right? It's the only place where people are just nice to each other and kind. There's no violence, there's no killing, right? It's just kind people, and they've got, problems, but they also work through them, right? That sort of thing. The Pit, which is Tartarus, is the deepest circle of hell, right? It is actual, like, punishment and damnation, right? And eventually, our main characters, towards the end of the show, will have to descend into the pit, i.e., a prison for the worst of the worst, in order for Reverend Hollowmarsh to find his arch nemesis, right? Odin.
Oh,
It is Odin, like straight up from Norse mythology. It's Odin, who has reinvented himself in the West and has decided to just have this rivalry with this man of God because
now, can I ask you a question?
He was
real quick?
bored, right?
I don't know if this is what you intended, but because this is like kind of like people die, come here. Is this like Odin died because people stopped worshiping him, or is this like gods can traverse the realms? I was playing with either idea, because on one hand, I don't want to be too like American Gods did that same thing where it's like, oh, if you stop worshiping gods, they start dying and all this stuff. And I didn't want to do that, but I also am like, I think it's more interesting if the gods, this is the gods' domain, right? And the way that people interpret the gods is that the veil is pierced and they're able to see into the Lost West and able to see into this area, and that is kind of coloring their interpretation of various mythologies across the world, like that's how John Milton came up with the idea for Pandemonium, is that he saw it, like the veil was pierced and he was able to see into the afterlife and was able to see this city, That's where Mekuntakutle, I'm not saying that right, I'm trying to. Oh, I thought that was an authentic
that's how they got their interpretation.
I thought you had done your research, and I thought you were a language expert. I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
I Googled it. It's complicated. Mekuntakutle. Yeah, so that was more my interpretation of it, but I want the final thing, because it's Reverend Marsh is on a revenge story, and really the only satisfying way to end a revenge story is by having him get his revenge, but also him realizing that revenge will never satisfy his feelings, right? Like, that's how revenge stories have to end, So I think he descends down into the pit to find Odin, who has been trapped there by Hades, the like Greek god, who's here not like a massive, like crazy powerful god. He's just kind of like a jailer, more of a warden than anything else. And Odin is like, I started this whole thing with you because I was bored. and I wanted to piss off your god, you know? You were a pawn. You're Job in this situation, right? I'm the devil, right? And, Reverend Marsh, skeletal, right? His eyes twitch, and he realizes that his family and his wife were killed for no reason at all. And Odin begins to laugh, and as his, cackle begins, Reverend just shoots him in the face and then walks away, right? And is just kind of, solemn and silent, right? So that's how that story arc ends with the show. I know I'm a little bit all over the place with this one, but I have a lot of ideas about this show. And the trench is one of the last locations that I really want to get into, which is, this is happening after World War I, right? And so all of the soldiers who died in World War I, they are still engrossed in that concept of being at war, and so they build these just endless trenches where they have endless combat, right? And our main characters have to get across the trench in order to get to Pandemonium, right? And so they have to deal with all these combatants, and so we have a fun episode where Reverend Marsh is using cowboy skills, and Hailee McCraw's got a Tommy gun, and he's mowing down fucking Germans and American soldiers alike, right? That's all. I've been talking for 40 minutes. I realized I didn't realize the episode going that long, but that's my show. West of Nowhere.
I like it a lot. I think it's fun. I like the Odin plot line. I was wondering. I thought it was gonna be death. The Raven. Obviously Odin's the Raven guy. The bird eye thing is interesting, where he's got the bird eye in his head, and then when he's in Raven form, it's the normal eye.
Yeah, and well, I was thinking, the Raven is because Odin's got two ravens, and he got rid of his eye for the knowledge, right? That's the thing. So the Raven, he's only got one Raven, but the Raven's got his eye, and he's got the Raven's eye, and he can see through both of them,
Yeah.
And so he's watching, always. That sort of thing.
That's cool. I like that. Because he can, that's neat. Neat way of doing that.
Yeah.
I like this map as well. I mean, bringing visual aids to the Verisable Pilots podcast. Very nice. I'm not sure how complicated this maze is, though, that I'm looking at here. I think they could probably get out of it pretty quickly. Though I'm not really sure. I'm not sure. I don't think
Winchester
you can
Labyrinth?
the maze you drew here. I don't think there actually is a way in and out of this maze. Unless, actually,
it's
I mean,
not
if
an
you go
actual
in
maze.
here, you
It's
can just pop out right here. So I guess that's pretty easy. But if you go in over here, there's no way out. But I know there is. Never mind. This is actually a very easy maze. I've solved it twice now.
I'm actually...
You should put this in.
And the trench,
once
I
the show
trench.
comes out, we can have placemats at restaurants for kids where they can do this maze, and they'll be pissed off when
That'd
they
be
find
great.
out it just takes about 3 seconds. There's 3 turns.
It's the easiest maze in the universe.
The one route that looks longer, there actually is only one path to go. There's never any point where you could make a wrong turn.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a very simple maze. Yeah, I every once in a while I like to draw things for my shows. It helps me make my ideas better.
That's very nice.
But thank you everyone for listening to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I'm your host, Charles. Along with me is always my co-host, our producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. If you like what you heard here and you want to hear more, please give us a like, a follow, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog, tell your cat. Remember, we will be here next week with a brand new televisual series.
I would.
Do you want to know what the title of it is?
Write it and figure it out.
You gotta write it. The title is Psychodelic.
Interesting. Okay, I like that one. All one word, I'm guessing?
Mm-hmm. Well, I put a line in it, so psycho-delic, but it can be one word if you want.
Ooh, I don't know. This could be futuristic. We could be seeing some crazy robot men. We could be seeing some weird. I don't know. I'm feeling sci-fi for this one. I'm not
weird
not
things.
sure yet, but based off the
Yeah.
title. That's what
I think it's
feeling. I like it a lot, too.
I like the title.
We'll have to come up with something, though.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you, and have a good day.